You know that moment when you see someone, maybe technically brilliant, but they struggle to connect with people, can't seem to get their ideas across.
Yeah, or the opposite, right? Someone who maybe doesn't have all the formal qualifications, but just, wow, they build amazing teams, they make things happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we usually just wave it away like, oh, good people skills. Like it's some sort of magic. You can't really pin it down.
Mm-hmm.
But what if we could? What if we could actually, dig deeper into what makes these soft skills tick? Understand them properly, maybe even figure out how to get better at them.
Well, that's precisely what we're going to try and do in this deep dive. We're looking closely at this whole idea of soft skills, and we're drawing on material from the book, Soft Skills, How to See, Measure, and Build the Skills That Make Us Uniquely Human.
Okay.
And the goal isn't to talk about vague personality stuff. It's really about the practical communication skills that are underneath all this. We'll be using the insights from the excerpts you shared.
Okay, great. So the book kicks off pointing out something, well, a bit odd. Why do so many organizations and even institutions seem to uh, get soft skills wrong?
Yeah, it is puzzling.
Like everyone nods along. Yes, vital, crucial. Especially now, so much work is teamwork, collaboration.
Relational.
Right. But then there's this huge gap. We don't really have a clear language system or methods to talk about them, let alone, measure or appraise them.
And the author points out how we end up using like hyperbole or sometimes even slightly moralistic language or clinical terms.
Yeah, like empathetic or
Mm,
a good listener, or maybe negative things too. It feels more like judging someone's character than evaluating a specific skill.
exactly. And that fuzziness, that lack of precision makes it incredibly hard for, say, higher education institutions. They struggle to actually teach these skills in a way they can demonstrate to employers.
Right, because employers are saying, we need graduates with strong soft skills.
Concepts.
But the universities are kind of left scratching their heads thinking, okay, how do we actually prove our students have them?
And meanwhile, as the book highlights, the actual nature of work is just becoming more and more social, more relational.
It's not just about sitting alone and doing your task anymore.
Not at all. And this rise in collaborative work is exactly why these skills are so valuable now, both for individuals wanting to, move up and for companies that want to function well.
So the book's argument is we need a big shift away from the vague stuff towards something more concrete.
Yes, a fundamental shift towards, as the book puts it, a unified language for soft skills.
Okay, like we have for hard skills.
Kind of. With the hard skill, you can look at task performance, quality, reliability, speed. We can measure that.
So how do we get that clarity for teamwork or leadership?
Well, the key insight, according to the author, is to zero in on communicative acts and communicative performances.
Communicative acts. Okay.
So instead of trying to measure like an abstract ability like leadership potential, you look at specific instances of communication. Did that email achieve its goal? Was that presentation persuasive? How effective was that person in that meeting?
So it's about what people actually do when they interact. Observable stuff.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from who someone is to what they do communicatively.
That makes a lot of sense. And this then connects to a really quite a profound idea in the book, that these soft skills might be the last bastion of uniquely human work, especially with AI getting so sophisticated.
It's a powerful argument, isn't it? You look at AI, large language models like GPT-4, they can reason, write code, generate text that's remarkably human-like.
Yeah, things we thought were just ours.
But the book argues there's something uniquely, idiomatically, and irreversibly human about certain types of communication.
Okay, I'm hooked. What is it? What's the uniquely human bit?
It's the ability to genuinely commit yourself to something through communication.
Commit yourself.
By using the right context, showing your true intentions, your tone, your cadence, even your facial expression, the whole package. It conveys a level of personal binding, personal responsibility that a machine just can't replicate.
Because you can reprogram a machine or turn it off. But a human making a promise.
Is putting themselves on the line. They're taking on personal accountability. And that, the book argues, gives these soft skills both intrinsic worth, they're part of being human, and instrumental value in the workplace.
So it's not just about the information transfer, it's the impact. the doing things with words idea. The book mentions J.L. Austin here.
Precisely. Austin's work is key. He showed that when we speak, we're not always just making statements that are true or false. Our utterances perform actions.
Like saying, I apologize, or I promise.
Or even simpler things. Saying, I bet you $5 it rains isn't just describing a possibility, it's making the bet. The words do something.
They have reference and consequence, as the book says. And because they do things, we can evaluate them not just on truth, but on success. Did the apology land? Was the promise accepted?
Exactly. And then John Searle built on this. He looked at the conditions needed for everyday communication acts like promises, apologies, requests to actually work.
And it's not just about the words.
No, it's about the shared beliefs, the expectations, the whole interpersonal context between the people involved. Mutual understanding and acceptance are key.
And the book talks about rules of dialogue, too. If you break them, it's like a contradiction in action.
A performative contradiction, yeah. Like, if you're asked a direct question in a serious discussion and you give a totally irrelevant answer, you're violating the implicit rules.
Now, what are some of those rules?
Things like being consistent, answering reasonable questions directly, or if you refuse, being able to justify that refusal. If you persistently violate these, you basically opt out of the dialogue. They're surprisingly powerful, these unwritten rules.
Okay, let's make this concrete. The book gives examples, right? Like promising.
Yes, and it breaks it down really well. Making a credible promise isn't just blurting out, I promise.
So what does it involve?
Well, your words need to align with your body language, your perceived thoughts and feelings. You need to convey genuine intention. And crucially, the other person needs to accept the promise. They need to believe you mean it and acknowledge it.
Ah, so it's a two-way street. Acceptance is part of it.
Absolutely. Only then is the promise really made, really binding in that interpersonal space.
And apologizing is similar. It's complex, too.
Definitely. A quick sorry might not cut it. A genuine apology, as the book outlines, involves clearly recognizing what you failed to do or did wrong,
Okay.
offering an authentic excuse or explanation that the other person finds acceptable, and showing you understand the impact. And again, it needs acknowledgement of the apology and its acceptance to be complete.
Wow, okay. Even just stating something, making an assertion, that has hidden rules, too.
It does. When you assert something, you're implicitly promising in a way that it's informative, it's relevant to the conversation, and crucially, that you believe it's valid.
And that you're saying it in a way people will understand.
Right. Your delivery matters too. It conveys your level of conviction.
Okay, one more justification. How does that work as a communicative act?
To successfully justify an action, you need to ground your reasons in mutual knowledge or accepted norms. And importantly, the reasons you give have to be perceived as the actual reasons for your action.
Not just something you cooked up afterwards.
Exactly. And you need to present it in a way that conveys sincerity and trustworthiness.
Now, the book also mentions that communication isn't always just A talking to B. Sometimes there's a wider audience.
That's a really important point. Communicative acts can be strategic. You might address one person, but your real goal might be to influence others who are listening or might read it later.
Like a manager's email. That's ostensibly to one person, but sets a tone for the whole team.
Precisely. Or think about a politician's speech, or even a strategic tweet. It might seem directed one way, but it has ripples, intended effects on eavesdroppers or the broader public.
Okay, so communication is complex, layered, performative.
Mhm.
How on earth do we start evaluating if it's actually effective?
Well, the book suggests starting with the basics, the sort of table stakes question. Is the message intelligible?
Can people even understand it?
Right. Not just the words themselves, phonetic or semiotic intelligibility, but the actual meaning. And you have to consider the audience. Do they have the background knowledge to get it?
Makes sense. That's step one. What else?
Then you look at the messenger. Two key things: sincerity and competence.
Okay, sincerity, do they seem like they actually believe what they're saying?
Exactly. Are they saying what they believe? And competence, do they actually know what they're talking about? Do they have the subject matter expertise?
Right, because you could be sincere but clueless, or competent but sound like you're just reading lines. Both affect how the message lands.
Hugely. And to get a clearer picture of effectiveness, the book recommends using evaluative rubrics and getting feedback from multiple perspectives.
Not just asking the person who received the message.
No, asking the audience, maybe coaches or observers, colleagues, even the person themselves reflecting on it, gathering these different views helps reduce individual bias and gives a much richer understanding.
That sounds much more robust. The book mentions something about truth scores.
Yeah, that's an interesting mechanism. The idea is to reward people giving feedback not just for their evaluation, but for how accurately they predict how others will evaluate the communication.
Ah, so it encourages them to think beyond their own gut reaction.
Exactly. It pushes for more objective, considered feedback. Are you really seeing something others see, or is it just your personal take?
Okay, this framework seems like it could be applied really practically, say, in meetings. The book talks about these nexuses.
Yes. It proposes analyzing meaning communication through three key lenses, or nexuses. The first is the sincerity, transparency, authenticity, validity nexus.
That sounds like a mouthful. What's it about?
It's essentially about trust and truthfulness. Are people being open? Are they saying what they really think? Can you rely on what's being said? It's probing that foundation of trust in the conversation.
Got it. The trust barometer. What's the next one?
The effectiveness, efficiency, actionability nexus. This looks at whether the meeting is actually achieving its purpose. Is it moving forward? Do participants feel their time is being used well? Does it lead to action?
Right. Is this meeting actually doing something useful?
Precisely. And the third is the inclusiveness, cooperativeness, psychological safety nexus.
Okay, and that's about.
That focuses on whether everyone feels they have an equal chance to contribute, to speak up, even to challenge ideas without fear of being shut down or penalized. Is it a safe space for real dialogue?
Those three lenses seem like a really useful way to diagnose meeting health. So if we want to develop these skills in people based on all this, feedback seems critical. But not just any feedback.
Absolutely not. The book is very clear. Feedback for soft skill development needs to be highly specific and actionable.
What does that mean in practice?
It means the feedback has to be, well, personalized, accurate, justifiable, objective, measurable, time-stamped, and timely. Phew.
Okay, quite a list.
And critically, it needs to enable the learner to see how changing specific behaviors can lead to different, better outcomes or evaluations.
So not just be more confident, but maybe when you presented slide 3, you were looking down and your voice trailed off, which made the point less impactful.
Exactly, that level of detail. Because listening these skills is complex. The book uses making a credible promise as an example. Interpreting whether a promise is credible involves what they call a double hermeneutic.
Double hermeneutic, meaning.
Meaning the person giving feedback isn't just interpreting the learner's actions, they're also interpreting how the original recipient likely interpreted those actions. It's interpretation layered on interpretation.
Wow, okay. That does sound complex. So the feedback really needs to nail down observable things.
Yes. Specificity, connection to behavior, context, timing, observability, measurability, impartiality, perceived usefulness. These are all key dimensions the book outlines for effective feedback in this area.
It seems much harder than feedback for, say, coding or fixing an engine.
It is. With technical skills, you can often break it down, give partial credit. With soft skills, it's often about the whole performance and how subtle cues influence the overall perception. Linking specific behaviors to those overall judgments is the challenge.
So the book proposes a sort of structured learning environment, a feedback-based learning scenario.
Right. It involves carefully setting up the context, the pretext, the context, the actual communication text, and the subtext, the underlying messages.
And how does the learning happen?
Through guided discovery. Instead of just telling the learner rules, the facilitator uses prompts and questions to help them see the relevance of all these contextual factors and communicative choices.
And it stresses the interactive nature, understanding what the other person is thinking.
Hugely. It talks about epistemic networks, what the learner thinks, what they think the other person thinks, what they think the other person thinks they think. It gets layered.
Okay, my head hurts slightly. But it makes sense for real interaction.
It does, and achieving genuine shared understanding requires alignment across these different levels of belief.
So in this learning lab, what kind of things would you actually observe and give feedback on?
All sorts of things. Body movement, vocal qualities, pitch, pace, tone, facial expressions.
Facial expressions, like micro-expressions.
Yes, the book even mentions tracking micro-expressions and overall emotional valence. There's an example figure tracking moments of contempt during an interaction and looking at emotional fluidity, how emotions shift.
That's incredibly detailed.
It is, and it also includes feedback on visual stimuli, like the quality of presentation slides. The key is recording the interactions video and transcript.
Why is recording so important?
Because it allows for precise, time-stamped feedback. You can go back to a specific moment, replay it, and discuss exactly what happened and how it was likely perceived. It shifts the dynamic from the facilitator saying, "Trust me, that didn't work," to "Let me show you what happened here."
From trust me to show me. I like that.
It creates a much more objective and data-rich feedback environment.
Okay, so this all culminates in the idea of a communicative skill development lab. This sounds like the book's answer to some of the problems we started with.
Exactly. It's positioned as a way to tackle the skills gap and the assessment challenges, especially now with AI like ChatGPT making traditional assignments, well, problematic.
How does it help with assessment integrity?
By focusing on live or recorded communicative performances, you're assessing the student's actual ability to communicate in context, something AI can't just fake for them in the same way it can write an essay.
So building this kind of lab, maybe integrating it across different university programs, even technical ones.
Could be a way to systematically build these crucial social skills. And AI itself can be part of the solution here, not just the problem.
How so?
AI, like LLMs and large-scale models, can be used to re-engineer assessment, analyze performances, and provide incredibly detailed, feedback-centered learning experiences.
Like having your own personal communication analysis tool.
Sort of. The book envisions students building personal cloud lockers of their recorded communicative performances. They can review them, get AI-driven feedback, human feedback, peer feedback.
A kind of video portfolio of their communication skill.
Exactly. Something much more dynamic and revealing than just a transcript or a grade on an essay that an AI might have helped write. The book gives examples of how LLMs can generate perfectly competent answers to complex questions, highlighting the assessment challenge.
Yeah, those examples on Hayek and Rawls were pretty convincing. It shows why focusing just on written output is becoming less reliable.
And it contrasts with the often impersonal, imprecise feedback students currently get. This lab idea focuses on practical scenarios, inquiry sessions, case discussions, mock interviews.
And the AI isn't just for analysis.
No, it can also act as a modeling assistant, showing examples of effective communication, or even as a dialogical learning assistant.
Like practicing a conversation with an AI.
Yes, an AI that can provide continuous feedback, ask probing questions, help expand conceptual understanding. The sample dialogue about social choice theory in the book gives a flavor of this.
Okay, this sounds powerful for education, but the book extends this to organizations too, right? The soft talent machine.
Yes, it argues that similar principles can address executive skill shortages and improve overall organizational effectiveness, because fundamentally, most work in organizations is communication.
So how do you build this machine?
It starts by anchoring job specifications much more clearly in communicative tasks. What specific communication acts does this role require?
Like the CEO example, all those meetings, emails, speeches.
Exactly. Break down the communication needed by direction upwards, downwards, sideways, and whether it's internal or external.
And then you can get even more specific.
Yes. Categorizing tasks like directing, informing, persuading, facilitating, deliberating. This creates a much clearer target for recruitment, development, and assessment.
And technology plays a role here too. Platforms analyzing communication.
Right. There's a rise in platforms using conversational and behavioral intelligence. The book suggests using these insights to re-engineer selection, asking interview questions specifically designed to assess these core communicative skills.
And for development.
The idea of a personal coaching cloud comes up again, a space for continuous feedback, maybe using AI analysis of work communications, with privacy considerations, of course, to support ongoing development.
There's even an example of using ChatGPT to evaluate a message's clarity and sincerity.
Yeah, it shows the potential for these tools to provide quick, structured feedback on everyday communications.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, I think the core idea is that soft skills aren't so soft after all. They are fundamental, uniquely human abilities grounded in concrete communicative acts.
And these acts can actually be seen, analyzed, measured. Maybe not perfectly, but much more precisely than we usually think.
Right. By focusing on the performance, the act of communication in context rather than vague traits, we can understand them better. And crucially, they can be developed.
Through very specific, targeted, feedback-rich environments, like the proposed development lab.
Exactly. Moving beyond generic advice to actionable insights based on observable behaviors.
So for you listening, the empowering thing here might be realizing that improving your people skills isn't about somehow changing your core personality.
No, it's about understanding the mechanics of communication, the promising, the apologizing, the asserting, the listening in meetings, and practicing those specific acts deliberately.
It's about honing observable skills. The aha moments might come from seeing just how intricate everyday communication really is and realizing you can get better at specific parts of it. So maybe a final thought to leave you with. How might things change for you, personally or professionally, if you started looking at your own interactions through this lens? If you identified specific communicative acts you want to strengthen and consciously worked on refining them, what if soft skills became less about innate talent and more about learnable, sharpenable abilities?